go into introductions, just a reminder that this is a listening session for us. That our task is to be listeners and to hear from your lived experiences and considerations or your thoughts about what we need to consider as we continue to move through this process. There are some cards out front. If you have not gotten a chance to fill out one of these, I'll ask you to do that, to fill that out, and this will help us organize how we have this conversation. So we'll start with introductions. I do want to recognize and acknowledge that we have a council person. Thank you so much, Councilwoman Raina Park Shaw. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you for your time and service. I know it's always good to see the people that represent us. So thank you. Would you like to say anything or share anything at this time?
They say I should always be ready for the microphone, but I just want to first of all thank you all, because I know this is a lot of time, especially being here on a Saturday, but you all have committed a significant amount of time over the next couple of months to pull off something that generally takes, we have 9 or 10 months, you all are doing in several weeks. So thank you all for your commitment to that. And thank you all for coming this morning. I'm here to listen as well. Again, I'm Raina Park Shaw. Please reach out to my office if I can do anything. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is a task that it'll definitely take all of us. So I'd like to go ahead and start over to my left, and if we can use this mic trends in front of you, Dr. Hill, and if we go ahead and push down that button, if we start with Pedro, Commissioner Zamora, and we'll go through introductions, just a little bit about ourselves, our name, our, I guess, district that we're representing, and if there's any particular message or communication that you want to share with our neighbors.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Paige Rosenwald. I'm the 4th District at Large Redistricting Commissioner. Proudly to represent our city and to make a miracle happen in this process. As it was mentioned, we're in a short window. We're coming out of a really difficult time with the pandemic, but this group here has been very conscientious about what our future for our city will look like. And as we work, we know we have responsibilities and accountabilities, and your input is going to help us meet those goals. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Chris Llewellyn, and I'm representing the 6th District. I've lived in Kansas City my entire life. For the majority of my life, I've been in the 6th District, a little bit of time in the 4th. I'm a restaurateur. I have 3 restaurants, Lou's Grill and Bar, The Well, Bar, Grill, and Rooftop, and Charlie Hooper's Bar and Grill, all located in the Waldo, Brookside area. I also am a commercial real estate investor and own several pieces of commercial real estate in the greater Kansas City area.
Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Kokipia Hill. I am here representing the 5th District, which I call home. It's a formal council district that I serve on the City Council. I'm excited to be here today, and even though I represent the 5th, I'm a native of Kansas City and have lived in many different council districts. So I'm excited to hear all the insight that you all have for us so we can continue this process. Thank you again for taking time on your Saturday to be here.
Hi, my name is Vicki Notice. I also represent the 4th District on the Commission, and I'm happy to contribute what we can. I'm also a native of Kansas City, Missouri, and I'm an urban planner. We do urban and community planning in our consulting firm, and prior to that I was with the city for 14 years as Director of City Planning. So I've either witnessed or had to get involved in a couple of these things that happen every 10 years. So it's really important to get public input. I'm glad you guys could take the time on a Saturday to do that. And we're happy to answer any questions or take any ideas we can from you while you're here today. Thanks.
Thank you. My name is Stephanie Smith, and I am representing the 1st District. I am a social worker, and so that's my discipline and often shapes my lens in how I navigate and see the world, the intersection of people and systems. And so I'm excited to do so. I'm also managing partner of Sophic Solutions, which is a change management firm. We help organizations navigate change through an equity lens, and also really I'm privileged to serve as the chair of this commission. So look forward to hearing your voices.
Good afternoon. I am Martin Rucker. I'm representing the 2nd District. I own Martin T. Rucker Development, a small business dump truck company here in Kansas City. And I just want to say thank you all so much for coming out, giving up a couple hours on your Saturday. And I'm also a public servant, so I love to do things like this that help our community. So again, thank you for your input, thank you for your time, and it's an honor to serve.
Good afternoon, Mike Kellum. I represent the 1st District. I too have a city planning background. I worked in the public sector, currently working in the private sector. I've worked for cities for over 10 years, but now working with an engineering firm doing all types of civil engineering projects which are important to, and the focus of our business is making lives better. That is actually our motto. And with that, I'm honored to serve alongside my fellow commissioners in this process, and looking forward to hearing the comments that you all have today and coming up with some equitable districts for representation throughout the city. So thank you very much for being here today.
My name is Quentin Adams. I'm a lifelong resident of the 3rd District. I'm a semi-retired lawyer here in the city, and I look forward to completing this process. I've been involved in redistricting several times for both the city, for the county, and for the school district.
Mr. Adams has no problem talking to the microphone when we give him one. I like it. I'm Reed Day, representing the 6th District at large, lifelong Kansas Cityan, minus a few years for school elsewhere. And I just want to thank everybody for coming out, and really looking forward to hearing your thoughts on what we've done so far and what we can do from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Teamwork. Okay, so as you all, for those of you that are watching the agenda, what we want to be able to move through, and thank you, Commissioner Kellum, for mentioning this. It is our hope and goal that we are helping to shepherd an equitable process, that we want to hear voices, and that means we also have to acknowledge what have been some of the pitfalls and some of the dangers, and for whom. And so we recognize that that is part of the process. We recognize that there are so many isms and other ills that have impacted what happens in and throughout our systems, and local government not being exempt from that. So thank you for being able to name that, and to make sure that we are holding and creating a culture of accountability of this practice. So at this time, I'm happy to welcome our city attorney, Attorney Emily. She'll introduce herself, and then we'll go into what the legal implications are of redistricting. Because what's important to know is that this commission group, that we're not making this up as we go. We have some clear mandates and some things that guide us as we lend our thoughts to this process.
Hi, I'm Emily Black. I'm with the Office of the City Attorney, and so I'm going to give that's probably right. Is that better? I'm going to give a quick overview about the legal obligations that we look at when we look at redistricting. So the first thing probably is to start with our charter section. So section 201B of the charter talks about how every 10 years after the federal census comes out, we have to redistrict. It's a mandate, and this must be completed by the last day of December of this year, so there's a little bit of the time crunch there. The charter also provides that there are 6 districts. So that is something that cannot be changed at this time. It's always something that can be discussed with the next charter commission. But for now, we are committed to those 6 districts, 1 at large, 1 in district. So now I'll get into the general requirements that are looked at by courts when we talk about how districts should be drawn. The first is what's known as 1 person, 1 vote. It's the Equal Protection Clause. It's also referenced as in state statute in 82-150, it talks about the same number as might be practicable. In the charter, it talks about districts that are substantially equal in size. But the general gist is that each district must have about the same level of proportionality. We review that and test that with what is known as the 10% rule. That's kind of what a court might look at in deciding if the districts are close enough in size. And that takes the percent that the largest district exceeds what would be the average and the percent that the smallest district is below what is deemed to be the average, and whether that exceeds 10%. That's not a guidepost, that's just something that if the court saw that they exceeded that 10%, it would be very difficult to argue that they were kind of the same size. Another thing that's referenced in case law a lot, but is also in state statute, is that the district should be compact and contiguous, and then state statute in 82-150 says adjacent and compact. Just the general principle that districts should be kind of geographically pushed together, shouldn't be part of a district and then 17 miles away is another part of a district. You can also look at the retention of neighborhood boundaries to maximize the ability of groups that are already kind of brought together. Oftentimes courts have talked about considering precinct boundaries. Having to redo precincts, particularly in a year like this where we're in a short time frame, would be very difficult. So often we look at respecting the precincts that already exist with the voting board. Community cohesion, keeping groups of people who are affiliated together. The historic borders of what has already existed. There's already been organizing and relationships built, and courts look at the interest in protecting those and giving people time to rely on what they've already built. And then incumbency, which is a smaller factor. It's it's obviously not the most important, but for first-term incumbents, people that have already been elected, the courts recognize that there's a good interest in not placing people against each other that have already been chosen. And then one of the bigger things that we look at, which is not a factor, but it's a principle that we need to make sure that we're not running afoul of, and that's the Voting Rights Act. So the general principle that we can't prevent a racial or ethnic minority from full participation in the political system. So when courts look at our current system or whatever system gets proposed or adopted, to make sure that it is not disenfranchising a racial or ethnic minority voting bloc. So there's a test that you look at that, which I can get more into, but the general principles are, it's that if there's a minority ethnic group that is large and compact enough that it could be a district minority, and that group is politically cohesive, making sure that there's not a voting bloc that deprives that minority voting bloc of the ability to pick their chosen candidate. So those are the general factors and legal principles that the Commission is looking at and working with. I guess if the Commission has any other questions, if I missed anything that you'd like me to hit on.
Curious if our neighbors have any questions about what was stated.
What's the date that this goes into effect?
So it will be for the next election, I guess, is the answer to that. and I'm gonna look at Councilman Park Shaw, which I believe is gonna be April of 22. Is that the first election that would be in district? It would be the next city council election, I will say that, which would go into effect in August of 23. Yeah.
So is that April or August?
Well, I believe it would be the August is when city councils begin their terms in August. So they would take their position in August, they would be elected in June, I think, that's the principle. People are nodding at me. So if somebody else,
I think it goes into effect, adopted by the council, they have to adopt something about it before the end of the year. And we're not having an impact with respect to election until the next city election,
Yes.
which is, I believe the primaries in, April of 23. April of 2023.
so yes, it goes into effect when adopted, but there will not be an election that is based on it until 2023, if that makes sense.
So just for clarity, it doesn't immediately change your representation if something is affected in that way. And I think it'd be helpful if we can, if our city staff partners can get us clarity on that, hopefully by the end of our time. We've got some whizzes in here, so we want to make sure that's a good question. But just to be clear about what that date is, our time is by December the 1st to be able to hand this over, these recommendations over to council. So our recommendations have to be submitted and the report has to be submitted around that early December timeline. And so once then it's in their hands, and then I think they have to vote on it before the end of this calendar year. So, Councilwoman Shaw, please get us right. All right, so does that help you? And then we're gonna get some pointed clarity, because I'm hearing your question being, what election will it impact? Get me right?
At the process, and when I heard the 31st December, I need to
Thank you. I'm listening to the process or looking at the process, and when I heard the 31st of December, I start moving back, like where we are now. This is October 1st, 2nd, and then moving forward. And then I said, okay, so when does this cycle into the what's next? And if this is going to the council, or if the deadline is the 31st, and then you said, okay, the council is going to get this around the 1st of December, they've got a real tight voting, decision-making.
You are correct. Okay. It is a very tight timeline.
Yeah.
So this data that we are processing is based upon the census, the 2020 census. Due to the pandemic, everything was delayed on the federal level as it related to the census.
Yes.
So what is typically a 9-month process has been basically reduced to about a 9-week or less process. Because what has not changed is that by the end of the calendar year in which the census was given, yes, that redistricting has to be recommended and approved by local government. So while the process timelines have shrunk, the deadline did not change. And so you are correct, it is a very tight timeline. I want to get a point of clarification that December 1st is when we will pass this information on to the council, and they have to have they have to make decisions by December 31st, which my understanding is around December 16th is their last council meeting. So it'll be around that December 16th where the council will then vote on what the remapping will look like. As we continue to adjust the things that we can adjust, this commission meets weekly. Every day from 4 to 6, this group is meeting at City Hall and discussing this. So for those that are familiar with this process before, the commission didn't really meet weekly initially, right? They had a little bit more time. But we meet weekly in order to process and move through the feedback that we receive through the webpage. And then also, of course, through the many channels that the commissioners provide directly. Any other questions related to what Emily stated before we move into our mapping presentation? Any questions about the legal parameters, the compound, the guidance? Okay. Well, thank you so much, Emily. Appreciate your time. We'll now pass this over to Cal. Once again, Cal and his team, which really helps to produce these scenarios. You'll see us use the terminology scenarios because that's exactly what they are. They're particular considerations based upon the feedback and also the brain trust of the commissioners. And then these scenarios are then examined, discussed, and always asking ourselves, and we have begun to establish a rhythm to our meetings. One, working to demystify what this process is all about, but also making sure that we're asking who is impacted, what is at stake. And so we'll ask you those same questions. And then we also would love, because you see we all have these, we're taking notes up here. What do you want the commissioners to consider? Will be really great as you take a look at these maps. So Cal?
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Kyle Elliott. I work for the long-range planning portion or division of the Planning and Development Department. Our job on this is to put some data and some maps together for you. We're going to run through real quick what to expect through the process and some of the maps that you've viewed in the back. Apologize for turning my back on you guys, but I need to see what's up here as well. So if you guys see someone that raises their hand, let me know and we'll turn around and ask that question. So the current council districts that we're working on right now were adopted in December 8th, 2011. And that kind of goes back to the question that just came up. It goes almost to the end of the year each time. The date that they were adopted is when they do come into action, and obviously the next election after that would be where it goes from. What we show on the screen up here is what Kansas City, Missouri looks like in its generality. So when you looked at the maps, that's the shape of Kansas City, 6 districts, and we've had this since 2011. Current population that we have is 508,090 people. We put the past census information up on there as well, just so you can kind of get understanding of how Kansas City is growing. It's about a 10% change from the 2010 census. Just real quick, gonna put some information that shows how the city has grown over time, so you can kind of see what is occurring. So what's shown on the map is where population has shifted in and out through Kansas City over the time period. So when you see the yellow dots come on and come off from 1940 to now, we're going to pair that up with some of the historic census boundaries as well, and it just kind of shows you why those boundaries shifted and some of the challenges that we go forward. I'm going to let it run through one more time and then we'll move forward with this slide. Also in this map, it shows you the date and it shows you the population of what was Kansas City at that time. Please also consider that the boundaries of Kansas City does change for annexation purposes as well. So it's a lot of stuff to handle. I appreciate that. One second, let me go back. The white part's where? Yep, so the municipal boundary of Kansas City actually has several other communities within it. So if you're talking about, if you can see my cursor, which I lost as well, these areas right there, that's the city of Gladstone, that's the city of North Kansas City, and a couple other communities like that.
So they're not included?
Yeah, totally different municipalities or jurisdictions. Yep. Mhm. What we're doing right here is kind of just showing you what the boundary of Kansas City looked like at the time of that. So you'll see a couple different shapes through there. The white area is up by KCI, by the airport. Is portions of the city that are currently there now, but that weren't at that time. So that's what that white area is. What we did going through this is we tracked all of the council districts the same color as we go through. On the left side of that is going to tell you the population of Kansas City at that time and how big the districts need to be. So that's something we haven't covered yet. If you take the population of Kansas City and you divide it by 6, that's the number of districts we have. That goes back to that equal representation comment. So for the current one, we'll show you what that's going to be, but that's what this number right here is. Also, just to help set some expectation and to tether people down a little, these were the people that were in charge at that time, just so you can kind of get a better understanding of what was going on. And I'm just going to click through it. So that was 66, this is 68. If you'll watch these districts in the middle change, you'll see how the population grew a little from the inside and has now kind of expanded back out. We're going to go to, sorry, there's a little lag, 1970. One of the, other than right now, this was the biggest population in Kansas City, 507,000 people. And you can see that the size of the districts are about the same that they're going to have to be for this time. And once again, you'll see as these districts in the middle get a little larger, that means that you've got population moving to the edges of the city. 77, 1980, 1990, this is one of the first times where we had 2 districts north of the river. 91, 2001, 2010, and then the last one in 2011. The reason we had 2 back-to-back redistricting efforts was there was a charter issue that I believe what it said is you could not have 2 or 3, I think it's 3 municipal elections under the same boundaries. Now, I'd have to go back and check that, but that's my recollection when we went through it. I do not believe that's a current issue. It only happens based on calendar issues, nothing dramatic. So real quick, any questions on that before we move forward? Okay, then we'll run through the data and some of the overviews real quick. Sure, let me go back to one of the maps. Actually, we'll hold on this one right here. So another version of Kansas City. In Kansas City, the city itself makes up 4 different counties. So you've got the Clay County portion, which is in District 1. You've got the Platte County portion, which generally makes up District 2. Jackson County is everything south of the Missouri River. And then you've got Cass County, which is the little tail down there, which is where Richard Scabauer used to be. So when you hear the term Northland, that's a bigger geography than just Kansas City, but when you talk about the Northland portion of Kansas City, it is the Clay and Platte portions of Kansas City that are in there. So right now that is District 1, District 2, and a portion of District 4, just south of the I-29 area. Pedro. Thank you. So when you take this information and one of the things that we have to do is when we're drawing the boundaries, we want to consider what the current boundaries are, where the changes have occurred. One of the things as a staff person that we do is we try to make the least amount of change. So we drop the populations in here to see how far out of balance they became over that 10-year cycle. This is a real simplified map that shows you how far out we should be. The number that we should be at is around 84,600. So as you're looking at home or in the room right here, this number in the column that says 2020 is how far away from that we are. So that's how much you're going to have to change. On the map, what it basically shows you is everything should be around 84,000. You've got a 92,000 in first district as they are currently drawn. So let me state that again. That's what the current boundaries are if we didn't change anything. That's how far out of balance should we be. In District 2, it's around 89,000. District 4 is also one of our larger ones, 90,000. The third district, 79,000. Fifth district, 79,000. And I'm rounding everybody, obviously. And or in the 6th district is 76,000 as well. So as I said, what that basically means, our charge with doing is following everything that's in the legal requirements of that, but then equaling the districts by about 84,000 or 85,000 people. You've got a little wiggle room either way. So when you're considering where racial boundaries are and other boundaries like that, you do have some room to play with, but as long as you're being considerate of those other things that we try to make sure that we do, is that we look at the election boundaries when we're considering those things. We look at current tract boundaries as well. Social aspects, so whether or not there's a school district in one place or a neighborhood boundary in some place, we try not to divide those. And then also simple shapes, that's back to the compact, contiguous, and adjacent standards. So you try not to make a totally irregular shape. However, I will say at times, once again, if you remember the scenarios from the past districts, there are times when you're wanting to make sure that you have good representation, that may be deemed appropriate. So real quick, we'll run through 3 of the 4 scenarios that we've looked at. So far, we've looked at 8 as the committee, or the commission, sorry. And everything that we're showing should be deemed as a draft. It's a draft, it's where we are right now. There's nothing that we're taking right now and we're taking forward. We're still in the middle of that process. That's why we're glad you guys are here. That's why we're glad we have so many people in the public. We want comment, but we're gonna real quick run through scenario 4. When you're viewing the maps, there's a lot of information on there. The hard blue line or black line, depending on what your monitor shows, is the current boundary change or current boundary of the districts. So anytime that you see a yellow and a purple here, that shows you that that the first district pushed a little farther over on that line. So that's when you're looking at the map, that's what it shows you. It's going to give you the title, obviously. Up in the right-hand corner, it's going to give you the same information. It's called an overview of what the general concept was, if there was one, like someone asked us to prepare it. It's going to tell you what the change is, and once again, that changes are things like this. People that may have currently been in, first district would now be in the second district. So we try to limit that. When you look at compactness as well, that's trying as much as we can to keep those in a somewhat compact state. Some of these are obviously very subjective, so it's just our quickest way to have somebody look at it. Very debatable at times too. We look at a couple of the things that we look at as well is how many of them cross into Northland via the river. So currently what we have is one district that spans that. You'll see a couple that have 2. In addition to that, we look at where the strengths of the Black or African American districts as well, to make sure that when it comes time to vote, there's a good opportunity for them to maintain the votes as they go forward, and the same with the Hispanic. So on this one, those are the standard things to look at on these maps. And once again, when it says 10% rule on the bottom, that's how close the biggest district and the smallest district are towards each other. So that's, as it's drawn right now with 2020 population, 3% on this map is pretty good. So real quick, and I'll be quicker on the other ones, the purpose of this map was to try to ensure 5th, cover southeast leg over here, and balance everything else. This was one of the scenarios that does a pretty good job of that as we go forward.
You have another question?
Oh yeah, certainly.
So you're doing sort of kind of racial segregation in these, because you're putting black districts with black districts and non-black districts with non-black districts.
We're trying to make sure that when it comes time for election cycle, and that's, and I'll yield to the people from law here to help me on that one, make sure that everybody has the right opportunity to be voted in or voted out of office.
As Cal continues to walk through the maps, we want to pause for if there is more clarity needed. We'll also then go to you all being able to share your thoughts or your considerations about the map. So as he's moving through this and you just say, hey, what does that mean? Those are the points of clarification. If you have comment, we want to make sure we get those too. Just make sure that we do that during the comment time. Thank you, Cal.
So we're going to move on to scenario 7. And once again, these are the 3 that seem to score the best. However, we obviously wanted everybody to look at all 8, so we brought all 8, and they're still in play. This one basically was set up to make sure that the 3rd and the 5th district maintained a really strong representation. We also wanted to make sure that the Hispanic voting bloc was not competing with the population in the 3rd and 5th district as well. So I had them give them the best opportunity to get somebody in office as well. This is a relatively compact district as well, and once again, only a 3% change. So when you start to make small changes to these maps, it does cascade. So there's some conversations as we go forward that will be really easy to fix and some that are a little different. And this is the last one that we are speaking with, other than if there's ones on the wall you want to look at. This is actually just a modification of scenario 7. Once again, it's trying to make sure that we have a strong 3rd and 5th district, that the Hispanic population is not in competition with those individuals of color as well, and it is also yields a moderately compact district. It does create some change. If you look at the areas of the 4th district, it does gain a bigger portion of what was historically the 1st. It also shifts the plaza up into the 6th district, and that's something that just basically due to population change you're going to see in a couple different scenarios. With that, that's the last map that we have up. We'll take questions, or I'll hand the mic over.
All right, any questions before we move into comments? Any questions about what you've seen? And once again, just a reminder that these maps that are aligning this back part of the wall were what we're calling our exploratory, our previously explored scenarios. Just, we felt like it was important to give some sort of insight into the journey that we've had in this time that we've been working towards this, so that you can have some perspective as we speak more about these. Any comments from commissioners before we move into testimony? Or not testimony, but thought?
I had a question. I think we had asked for, and I don't know, I can see if it's up there on the board. Did we get the numbers on the population percentages for the 4th district with respect to the population in Clay County and the population in Jackson County? Any of these areas?
So at our last commission meeting on scenario 4, I think, and I think I'm too close to that speaker, one of the things that we were asked to do, because 4th would be in Clay County and in Jackson County, was to check the percentage of how many individuals would be in Clay, how many are in Platte. We have not had the time to do that. From our last meeting on Wednesday, we basically geared up for this one. We will get that information for you.
There was a previous question that was posted on, and thank you to our Facebook and YouTube viewers for joining us. There was a question by a neighbor that asked, what can we do as civilians to ensure fairness in redistricting? My response is to be as engaged as possible. Be as engaged as possible. To take advantage of the Zoom access, or maybe even the in-person access that is available every Wednesday. This commission meets. You're welcome to attend virtually, and I believe in person as well. Someone from the city let me know, just as long as you have a mask. Mask mandates will be enforced. So join in on that process. Also, share the web page with your neighbors, with the groups that you are part of. There's a lot of information on there, and that will continue to grow. We also have a feedback section, so please share your input as well. Our hope, as I said before, is to move from this culture of perfection to act like that only these 9 people and 9 people alone know what should happen. No. But we are really tasked with shepherding the process, and so we want to engage your input. We have some ideas, but so do you, and so we need to hear those, and so that would be my thought. Any other additions to that, team? Okay, so we'll go ahead and go into hearing your thoughts. First up is Richard Daltry. Thank you so much.
Hey, I'm Richard Doherty. I go by Jeremy, my middle name, but I live in 4th District now, but we're moving to 1st District. And I apologize for wearing a hat. I got burned in a church fire in Kansas City like 2 weeks ago, and they had to pull a skin graft off my head and put it on my arm. I've been in research all last week. At a black church in Harlem, Kansas City, if you guys know where that's at. And this is the second major injury I've had working for Kansas City. I crushed my neck at a house fire at 30th and Agnes. Those are both black areas of town. I came today because I'm pretty upset about the districts. We keep drawing these lines down Troost. And I mean, everybody gets upset about J.C. Nichols and redlining and all those other things. And that happened 100 years ago. This is 2021, we're still doing the same things. My son today is at the Air Force Academy. He's on the debate team and he's debating Morehouse University on desegregation. I mean, it's 2021, he's debating Morehouse on desegregation. This is the best that the city has to offer for our districts. Somehow 150 Highway and Swope Park will be in the same district as 150 Highway by Grandview would be in the same district as Swope Park. The Plaza would be in the same district as Briarcliff and 435 and Winter Road. But the people that live in Manheim won't be in the same district as the people who live in Hyde Park, right across the street. While we look at the irony of Black Lives Matter mural getting painted at 31st and Troost today, I mean, I don't understand why we can't be representative of the neighbors. You know, our representation can't be from the same neighborhood we live in. Why can't we have city council people that live next to us or represent the community we live in? I don't think the segregation issue is as important as it used to be. Mayor Lucas got elected citywide, Randy Ellington, Lee Barnes, all these people got elected citywide. They're all African Americans. Mayor Lucas isn't the first African American to be elected in Kansas City. I mean, Kansas City is 29% black, but over 50% of the people voted for him. Oh, sorry, I guess my 2 minutes are up. If I could just...
What we've decided is due to the size that if we can extend that time, that'd be great. So please finish, Jeremy.
Sorry, I'm nervous. I don't usually talk in front of groups, even though I'm a fireman. I'm loud as hell at work. I would feel better if the city council districts were more aligned with the areas where people live, where 3rd District would just cut right across. And 4th District was in the center, and 5th District cut right across, so we wouldn't have these gerrymandering of racially segregated districts in our city. I don't even know why we need a map in the back of the room that shows where the black population is and the white population of Kansas City is. I don't know if that's really important. I'll vote for somebody who's a good candidate than the color of their skin. So that's all I have to say about that.
All right, thank you so much for your comment. Any points of clarification from the commissioner based upon what our neighbor shared?
So your question, your statement was that you'd like be aligned with the population. And I think I personally took it difficult to absorb the gerrymandering comment. We have to comply with the federal law. We have to comply with the state, charter. And we have to also take a look at what it means to put people of color into office to represent the communities. And if that means the task that we have today is to look at historical boundaries, we have taken that as our first step in our journey as those maps reflect. Your comments will be brought back into the commission and we will look at those because the districts are difficult to map out. We will have a commission report that may include smaller districts, to your point, to where folks are represented by the people in the district. And at large, it makes it a little bit more difficult in our current charter. So. Yep. Right. But we have to comply with the federal law that talks about minority opportunity districts to allow representation within city council.
I also just want to say one thing. I mean, we're talking about council boundaries and lines, but these are artificial in terms of relationships. So as we start thinking about what it means to be in community with someone, I mean, having been on the council, you work right now. That may represent another district. So even though we're talking about hard lines and boundaries and comply with the standards that the attorney talked about, I do want to impress upon you guys that we make up the community, and we can cross those artificial boundaries to establish relationships and make sure voices are heard and representations in decision making. So thank you for doing that.
I understand you guys work together across the county lines, but when you live in Briarcliff and you only have 7 council members living anywhere near you, half the city council members live within 200 miles of each other, even though we have 300 mile city. The rest of the city council members. I'm glad you guys work together. It makes, it's a positive thing, but I don't feel like the city can represent the citizens of the city when the districts are so spread out or
So one thing that I think that is important as we're listening, I'll ask the commissioners to direct if there's any point of clarification that you all feel like you need to ask to better understand what is heard. We don't want to get into this rebuttaling of one another, but instead listening for one another. So that's more for me and my colleagues, and I apologize if I didn't provide any clarity into that.
I just wanted to add that you've raised an issue that is very prevalent. A whole lot of people ask the very same question. And part of the challenge that we have and you have, the whole city has, is our whole city is laid out in a very weird pattern. Partly because of taxation, especially of the land. It makes it difficult when a district has to be 85,000 people, thank you, which is pretty big. And we have certain parts of the city that are very different from each other. The last time around, some of those got moved into districts together where they really, and they hadn't been historically, but they also have very different interests and they need different resources. And so that's part of our challenge, is that we have 3 cities in the middle of ours, and we have to have contiguous boundaries. But it's important that if you look historically, especially at how we ended up with such segregated neighborhoods, you touched on it, but there's a long history of that, that what that presents is we have 2 districts who can, because we were segregated for, all the wrong reasons, but that does allow 2 districts to probably get some minority representation on the council. And if you know Kansas City very well, running at large and running in this whole city is very difficult. And we do get votes from all over the place. We've been, cities have been encouraged by people who've run at large and won. So I think we've made lots of strides and issues on that. But when you have to make sure that somebody in districts can represent it, can have a good chance of winning, it's important so they don't just get overpowered by the same old people who used to run everything, all from one district pretty much. And this makes it a little bit easier. It's a huge challenge to try and meet all of these requirements, but it's a good point to keep in mind about why and what some of the limitations are and how we can turn that into a positive impact.
Thank you. Once again, commissioners, I'll ask you to limit your your statements to just pointed clarification questions so that we can navigate. We'll have some time, hopefully afterwards, to speak to other and share additional commentary. Okay, Terrence Nash.
Church Nash, South Kansas City. Out in South Kansas City, there's a little bit of an area that from Blue River to Big Mills Drive, which is the old 71 highway. We believe that should be in the 5th district instead of the 6th district. They have traditionally been with Southern Communities Coalition. They've been, they're in Higg Mills School District, and it would just unite the community, and they're compatible with the 5th district more than the 6th district economically. Blue River to Higg Mills Drive. In other words, it needs to move west to Ward 20, Precinct 5, Ward 20, Precinct 8, to the west, to make that the western boundary on the 5th district. And we have this discussion about the city being, it's not a segregated city, and that's the challenge of all this, redistricting, because probably in 2031, it will be real difficult, because as you can say, is we're becoming more desegregated every day. Nobody, I mean, look at the mayor, he lived in the 3rd district, now he's in the 4th district. So, you know, he changes boundaries too. So, I mean, it's gonna be a bigger challenge in 10 years. And we were segregated by ethnic groups, not only by racial groups too, back a long time ago. We had the Italians live in one area, the Irish and the Germans and everything else. So that's basically what I just wanted to discuss, is that little bit of a change for the area out in the Higg Mills area. Thank you very much.
Jimmy Fitzner.
Thank you. Hello. My name is Jimmy. I live in the northeast side, so 64123 zip code. And I'm here today to talk about that. I grew up in Likens. I bought a house in Indian Mound, both neighborhoods there on the northeast side. First job was in Sheffield, so I know those areas very well. And I'm coming to speak to you all to advocate for drawing those two neighborhoods, Likens and Sheffield, L-Y-K-I-N-S, Likens neighborhood and Sheffield neighborhood, into the 4th district. And here's why. And to be explicit about where those are, that is south to 12th Street, so from Independence Avenue to 12th Street, and this is all east of Benton Boulevard. So with respect to Commissioner Adams' statements in previous meetings, it wouldn't encroach on some of sort of the black institutions, like you had mentioned Gates Barbecue and things like that. That whole area right there wouldn't encroach on those areas. So we're talking about east of Benton Boulevard and down to 12th Street. And then, again, Likens and Sheffield neighborhoods. And I think that it would, one of the most important reasons why you would do that, not only are you making the Northeast more whole and adding all of the Northeast neighborhoods together in that respect, but those neighborhoods are now overwhelmingly Latino. And if we can draw those two, they're very compact neighborhoods, and if we can draw those into the 4th district, then we will bolster Hispanic voting power, Latino voting power, according to the maps that you all put on your website. They're becoming overwhelmingly Latino, and I feel like if we're drawing those into the 4th district, that would be a way for you all, without covering a lot of geography, to get two very compact, overwhelmingly Hispanic neighborhoods into the 4th district and sort of bolster these numbers that we're looking for. It would also, and again, this is the boundary that touches the 3rd district currently, so it would also, I think, take away from some of diluting the black population in the 3rd district, right? So just basically adding those two neighborhoods to the 4th is something that I think is a great idea, and I appreciate all of everything here has been public, and the transparency that you all have showed, and the cordiality that you all have showed to each other. In these toxic times, it's really appreciated. So thank you all very much. The boundaries of Sheffield there are railroad tracks that sort of align parallel with sort of Winter Road or Wilson Avenue, and it goes down to 12th Street. So it's kind of a, you know, these two districts sort of fit together. They're triangular shaped. They fit together like a small rectangle here. But that's the railroad tracks that cross. They run northeast and southwest. They cross Independence Avenue, and then those railroad tracks go down to 12th Street, and that's east. The neighborhood cuts shy, just shy of 435, but you know, you can go all the way to 435 on that, and there's not a lot of people living there. It's all kind of industry, but it's yeah, like I said, all of it is east of. It's just east of Lichen. So Lichen starts at Benton Boulevard and goes over to the railroad tracks, and then the railroad tracks go over. That's Wilson Avenue and Winter Road that sort of kind of cut northeast like that.
Well, you haven't told me much I mean. Do you know the boundaries for streets or what, or the wards and precincts?
Oh, the eastern boundaries like Winchester. Yeah, Winchester is most of that boundary. But again, it gets kind of funky there. But that Winchester, yeah, I googled Sheffield, Kansas City. That's where it was. So it showed me the boundaries there. So Sheffield neighborhood, Lycan's neighborhood. Yeah. Winchester is that main eastern boundary on Sheffield.
And thank you for that, Jimmy, and thank you for your encouragement. We'll continue. Please know we have Cal and team here as well that will really be able to help us get that pinpoint. So thank you for that. Yeah, Cal. Thank you, Jimmy. Next up, Paul Rapaz. Get me right. Oh, that's Jay Rojas. Paul Rojas. Thank you.
In the interest of time, I'll be very brief. I know your time is limited also, and you have your work cut out for you. And I'm not speaking for any particular group. I'm here as a private citizen, but I know that there are people throughout this whole city watching what takes place here. I think, I don't know, in my community, we will be especially trying to stay on top of things. And I know everything that's out there is not set in concrete, but we look forward to a fair redistricting process, and that we not get gerrymandered, plain and simple. And I'll leave you with that, and we look forward to working with you when the elections come around. We look forward to working with everyone who works with us. Thank you. We are just saying people in general. Like I said, I'm not representing anyone in a particular group, but there may be time, I know this is not the last meeting, there may be time when others may want to appear representing this group or that group and work in unison with you all, you know, in the drafting of boundaries. Thank you.
Mr. Rojas, before you leave.
I just wanted to say thank you for your service and go Tigers.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute.
There you go.
Thank you so much for your service. Leave it to record. All right. Next up, we'll have Lamar Vickers. Lamar Vickers. Welcome, neighbor.
You don't have to say that this is a fact-finding day for us. You know, we don't even know how long this process has been going. But I want to impress upon you the words that have been spoken. Proportionate, disenfranchisement, retention, gerrymandering. And then the question, my biggest question is, you said that you do this every 10 years. Have there been years where nothing changed? Have there been years that the count allowed for things to remain? And with this process that you're doing for the last 30 years, the 3rd and the 5th district is the recipient of disproportionate gerrymandering, redlining. And so we want you to please take those points into the consideration that you're doing and how it affects the inadequacies that's been going on in the community. And what's really strange about listening to this, with the 4th, the 1st, the 2nd, and the 6th district, what's the need? Well, I mean, what's the need for any change when they already getting what they want? Ain't nothing lacking. So if you're gonna change anything, change it so that it strengthens the ability for the less fortunate. Don't change this so that you can strengthen the ones that's already strong. When you get finished with this process, be of good, clear conscience that you didn't help to further the inadequacies that's going on in this city today. And Stevie Wonder can see what's wrong. So we asking y'all to see what's wrong, not what's right, what's wrong, and to use your better judgment to empower those, especially I'm speaking primarily for the 3rd and the 5th. Serving in the 3rd and the 5th district is pitiful. When you look at what's going on in the 4th, the 6th, and the 2nd. When you look at the development that's going on in all those other districts, and personally to know that it's basically predicated on the vote. So, and we understand that the 3rd and the 5th, we have to get them up, vote, the numbers up voting wise, but at the same time, you have the ability to circumvent that process I'm believing, I don't know, I'm on a fact-finding mission, but I believe that this group has the ability to make things more equitable. So that's what I'm here on behalf of the people. And first of all, to find out how long y'all been doing this, and now, why is it that now we get ready to make the decision in December, even though the vote won't come about till 23rd, your recommendation will be in, from what I'm hearing, in December. Please make the recommendations based on what's right, based on what's fair, based on what is equitable for the disenfranchised and people who don't have the voice. Applaud to Clinton for being there with them. Let's do something that's good, y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Vickers. And to provide a little bit of clarity, and we'll look to the city staff for one of the other questions that Mr. Vickers asked. This group that is sitting before you, our first meeting was September the 8th. September the 8th. So just a few weeks ago. As we stated earlier, the commission is formed once the information is received from the federal government, the census information. So this group has had 4 meetings. And just a reminder, every meeting can be found on the YouTube channel, the city's YouTube channel. We encourage you to take a look at those. It has been our, not just intent, but practice to be transparent, to make sure that there is a sight line, because we expect our neighbors to hold us and walk with us on this journey of accountability. So thank you for the opportunity, Mr. Vickers, to clarify that. But September 8th, it was our start. Our goal is to submit a recommendation report to the council by early December, the beginning of December, as they are mandated to make a vote by the end of this calendar year. So thank you for that. Any other points of clarification or responses? Okay. And then you asked the question, Mr. Vickers, about has there been years where nothing has changed? Cal? Okay. Once again, this process is not based upon what those who are asked to serve in this commissioner role, what we want. It is guided by the components or mandates that Emily walked through at the beginning of our time together. So what shapes that are the numbers of people, residents who live within, and so Cal, if you could put the district numbers up, the current district numbers up. So every 10 years when there are, because there are more than the allotted numbers, and as you can see, this is the current standing, there has to be shifts. Because this means that some of our neighbors are at risk of not getting their voice heard because it's one person, one vote. And there can only be 85,000 people in a district. So as you can see, some of our neighbors have way more than 85,000 or so, while others are under. And so that is what guides this. What also guides it is the fact that they need to be compact and contiguous. They have to make sense. We can't jump over and around. And then we also have to honor the Voting Rights Act. So to your point about making sure that we are not contributing to disenfranchising voice and people, that is also what guides us. So thank you for the opportunity to share that again. Any additional? Next up. Cal, did you have more to add to that? There was okay. And so just the short answer, has there ever been a year where districts did not have to shift? I guess that was the big question. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll talk about, in the presentation it shows the boundary changes. Here, I'll pull it up real quick and you can just watch the patterns. So once again, it's from 1966 through 2000, and I'll go up and down just so you can see the changes once it decides it wants to do it.
But Kyle, there's never been a time when it hasn't changed.
No, the population has changed and the distribution within the city has changed too. So if you watch just the boundary changes, and if you look at the population difference, you can tell that each time the central districts have actually stayed relatively anchored to each other. And that's kind of how it's been historically. So real quick, it has changed. It likely will change this time too.
So the answer to your question is yes. So no, there has never been a decade period where it did not change. But what is important to note, or at least what is being cited, that either there was either some sort of minimal change or in some decades, broader change for certain districts. So there's always been a change every 10 years. And that's the credit to the growth that the city is seeing. So as a city, we're growing, and so those things are changing. Thank you again, Mr. Vickers. We'll bring up John Sharp. Hello, neighbor.
Thank you very much. I'm John Sharp. I'm here to speak for myself. I'm sorry I didn't get here a little earlier, but as you know, we had a 6th District cleanup today at So I've been at Ruskin High School since 6:45 till afternoon, but there are a lot less waste tires lying around now, so it's a good thing. I would respectfully like the commission to consider a couple of points, and I understand that we have to be very careful that we don't dilute African American voting strength in the 3rd and 5th districts, and I know that's a constitutional mandate, and we have to be very cognizant of it. And I think we all would like to see districts where the Latino community would have more of a voice in a certain district rather than being split up among others, among several. But I would like to mention a couple of things for South Kansas City because I feel more knowledgeable about that. And I just came from Ruskin High School, as you may see from my shirt, because that was where one of our cleanup sites were. And that's in the Hickman Mills School District. And I would greatly appreciate anything you can do to keep at least the bulk of the Hickman Mills School District in one district. Right now, we're chopped up between the 5th and 6th, and we really don't have a lot of voice numerically in either one. Now we're very proud, particularly of one of our 5th District Council people who's here today, who happens to be a proud graduate of Ruskin High School, where I was at the homecoming last night, and they're very aware that she is a alumni of Ruskin and treats us very well, and so do the 6th District Council people. But we'd like to be in a position where we don't have to depend just on the goodwill of elected officials, but we do have some political influence in a district. And we feel that the logical district where the bulk of the Hickman Mills district, if not all of it, should be in is in the 5th. And that we are a largely African American area out there in school district. We think that would shore up African American voting strength in the 5th district. And we'd appreciate any consideration for that. Now, it might be hard to get the whole district in there because the Hickman Mills School District kind of tails off and has a little tail that goes out toward Martin City. We don't have a lot of students from that area, so that might make it difficult. But at least the area from Blue River Road east, or at the very least 71 Highway east, would give us more strength in that area. We'd feel we had more influence. And it just kind of strikes me as odd when I look at these maps to see a map that goes clear up to Westport and includes part of Westport and the plaza in the 6th district that goes clear into Cass County. I mean, it goes south of 155th. Because as you know, we actually have part of Cass County. And that just seems to me that the people that live in Westport and north of the plaza have disparate interests than the people that live at 120th and Warnell or 155th and Warnell. So if you could consider that too, I'd appreciate it. And let me thank you for one thing. I am so glad that it appears the commission is going to make a recommendation that we might at least have a charter commission to consider ditching the 6-6 plan, because that makes it so difficult for ethnic minorities to win those at-large seats, but not just ethnic minorities. There are so many people in this community that devote so much time, volunteer time, to help in their neighborhoods. But yet to run at large and win, boy, if you don't have some real dough, you better have a pretty inept opponent. I mean, you can still win, but it's sure tough, because it just costs so much money. And I would rather see smaller districts where neighborhood activists and people that have worked in the vineyard have a realistic chance of getting elected to the council. And remember, not only does it make it tough having a 6-6 plan to win at large, but because you only have 6 districts, each of the districts is bigger. So it's tough to run a door-to-door campaign in a district. When I was elected to the council, we hit every door, but I didn't hit them all. I just couldn't get around to them. But if you're running in a smaller district like the state representative districts, you can hit every door. And I think that's important, and I think that should be considered. So I'm very glad the commission is considering that. And clearly that would help the Hispanic community have the proper influence they should have, but it helps everybody. So thank you so much for your initiative on that. Thanks for letting me testify.
Thank you so much. Any points of clarification?
John, what was is your view that we should move that, do you agree with Terrence Nash, I believe number 2 speaker, that we should move that boundary out there? Oh, okay, I'm sorry. The boundary out there in, with respect to Hickman Mill School District, that we should move that over to Blue River rather than 71 Highway, is that?
Yes, I understand. Yes, sir, I understand the question. Mr. Nash and I, as you know, don't generally agree on things. But I think from our standpoint in Hickman Mills School District, we'd love to all be in one district. But I understand also going clear to Blue River Road, that might make it difficult to maintain the African American percentages we want to maintain in the 5th district. But I would hope you'd at least consider it. But surely, at least go west of 71 Highway, because that is a major dividing area. But we all of us in Hickman Mills really do kind of identify with each other in the neighborhoods. I was there at our homecoming last night. We had John Carmichael and I, and he lives west of 71 Highway, between 71 Highway and Blue River Road. He was there selling raffle tickets for Educational Foundation along with me before we had a great homecoming but a terrible football loss. But the homecoming was great. But we all of us from around the district were there supporting Ruskin and supporting our students. And so we do have that commonality.
They do understand that there may be a conflict between your first request about not to dilute the African American voting strength in the 3rd and the 5th, and then maintaining those other neighborhoods that you were concerned about being in the 6th district, with all the neighborhoods being in the 6th district. You have to change the configuration of the 6th district to keep the 3rd and 5th district population to avoid diluting the voting strength.
I understand that has to be a priority, and I haven't had access to all the population figures you have, although we're trying to get them. But I'm just saying, from our preference, we'd love to have the whole district in one district, in one council district, the whole school district. But I understand precedence has to be given to maintaining the African American majorities in the 3rd and 5th. So that has to be given priority, but I sure think that the boundaries of the 5th can be moved further west without doing that. But I don't know that they can necessarily be moved all the way over, but at least consider it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Okay. I want to pause. If there are any additional speaker requests, if you can go ahead and lift those up, and then our team will be sure to pick them up. We want to make sure that everyone has a chance to share. All right, up next, Frankie Anderson. Thank you, neighbor.
Thank you. I want to make a comment for consideration, and I want to suggest that the council here, or whatever this is, the commission, go back and look at the election result process. Let me explain what I mean. Back in our last election, well, the last 2 elections or so, when people have to go to vote, there gets to be a bottleneck. So I'm saying, if you guys would go and commission people and ask what were the issues or problems and so on in the consideration of redrawing these district lines. At one point, I live in the 5th district. At one point, and this may have been during the Obama election years, we were sent to vote at the Bruce Watkins Community Center. Well, the following election process, that center was not open or it was restricted, and we ended up going to the post office to do election early voting. And at one point, the election at the post office was in their office downstairs, but then it got moved to a larger facility room up on that ground level. And we all stood there from all over the city. We were all very respectful and smiling, and we just stood in long lines, but they moved until we got to vote. And I knew that I was standing next to someone from another district. They were not my normal 5th district people that I see when I go vote. And so we went through the line and processed, and everything went fine. We were able to do the early voting. So I'm just saying, in your gathering of information, look back to what were issues, problems, concerns when we go to the booth. I know rules have changed and so on, but it's kind of like when we have these flash floods and stuff, and we say, well, it really came from way up there, and we need to do this, so now we have city alerts. Now they even let you know on your block if there's something coming. So we've gotten better and better and better at being more specific at what we need to be concerned. So I'm just saying, not just look at population, yes, but go to the election people and ask them, because I know they do, review, ask them what the issues had been so you can consider that. So maybe it's just voting centers that were just more reasonable. Mm-hmm. It's just looking beyond what you're looking. I know you guys are doing a great job. And so it's just considering something that we don't think about until election day. And then we're standing and saying, whoa, that's not working, or that. So just look back a couple of cycles or ask them for their, what their findings have been over when you actually get to the booth. Okay, final thing. When you go to park at big places for big events like Kauffman Stadium, they have figured out, you go in this way, you circle that way, you go, and it's smooth, it's just, so let's figure that out where the rubber meets the road. For all of this that you're doing. Just have that as consideration.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. I also want to make sure that we're managing expectations, because so much of what you said sounds like great considerations and recommendations for the election board and for those. However, I hear you, and we will take a look at what those elections are, but I want to manage expectations that the work of this commission may or may not affect that. So I don't want you to think that was unheard. But I hear you. We will take a look at the previous election patterns and move forward.
Well, I'm just talking about the process.
We hear you.
The process that we often will have an issue, but we're only looking at these 2 or 3 things. So I'm just saying, consider that one of you, or maybe a small group of you, a committee, that just considers how this happens that makes this work or not work.
Thank you. All right, our last comment, Jean Davis.
Good afternoon. As I
mentioned earlier and did not save my comments, I feel that the drawing of these lines could be along racial discrimination. I don't see any difference from the point that Lamar made, that money is spent evenly per district, and if you consider the racial lines of the district, the lower socioeconomical districts get the same amount of money, so they get less services. 35 or so years ago, I went out and got a real estate license because I hated redlining. I got an insurance license because I wanted my NHS clients to be able to get money for insurance and insure their houses east of Troost. I'm a New Yorker. I chose to live east of Troost, and I have lived east of Troost since 1973. My poor little guys at UPS would come up to me and say, "You live in the hood?" I said, "Yes, I live in the hood." "Why?" I said, "By choice." Because there's no difference living east of Troost as living west of Troost. Yet y'all want to consider Troost as that dividing line. There is nothing in the law that says you cannot start with a horizontal line straight across Kansas City and tweak it to make it match your population demographics. Y'all just want to pretend that you're going to use what was there before and tweak it to the population. No, step out of your comfort zone. Get real and say, we are who we are, and we are going to stop all this now. We're going to start with a horizontal line. We are going to make everybody even. We're going to make the east side of Troost even with the west side of Troost. We can elect a black mayor. We can elect black council people at large. We don't have to worry that the African American population has to have their own little district, so they only get 1/6 of the pie when people in North Kansas City, who have a whole lot more money, get more. My neighborhood happens to be in 4, 5, and 6. I was the president of 3,000 homes for 4 years of very socioeconomical things. I didn't care. I don't care how much money you have in your pocket. If you came and asked me for help, I would give you help. We have to stop, and we have to stop now. We shouldn't follow neighborhood boundaries. My 4963 neighborhood is a perfect example of that. We have different boundaries in different districts. You don't need to follow those. It's worked for many, many, many years. It's worked since 1973 when I came here. My council person is here. She could get elected at large tomorrow. She's not white. We have to stop attacking the intelligence of the people in your community by saying, well, we have to kind of follow guidelines, because we know better. You can start with straight horizontal lines. And I've checked. You don't have to use Troost as a dividing line to set up your council districts. It may be a little harder on the council people because they might have to step across Troost into a neighborhood they don't like. Too bad. If I can do it, they can do it. The Hispanic population is centered in one area. It will not dilute them by putting them in a straight horizontal line. If nothing else, it will give them a broader spectrum of what to deal with. You're causing continued suffering by not realizing what needs to be done by taking out that Troost line. Little Harlem suffers greatly. I've worked with Little Harlem. 4 days a week, I give food to homeless people. some nights, some afternoons. I volunteer in the 3rd district, which is predominantly of color, because they need volunteers, and I'm 68 years old. We have to stop doing things socioeconomically. It's a fine line for saying, hey, I'm gonna put those people over there when I'm gonna keep these people over here. That's garbage. That's garbage, because we are all equal. And we need to start being treated equal so that we can raise everybody up with a helping hand instead of pigeonholing them into, nope, not them.
Final thoughts, please.
You have the option to change this. You have the option to put on your big boy pants and do it. So put on your big boy pants and let's go.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Davis. Any additional thoughts? Comments from our commissioners as we close out?
What our parameters are, but I guess I can't stand to hear it any longer without responding to it. And that's the notion, people keep talking about we've elected black people at large and we elected mayors at large. And that's all well and good, and I hope it continues. But the whole thing is that we have to protect the rights of minorities to elect a representative of their choice for their districts. The districts where they make up the majority. And as far as I know, I'm a pretty good historian, but I might have missed it. But as far as I know, the 1st, 2nd, 4th, or 6th has never elected an African American to represent them in district. Never. The only African Americans serving the council elected in district have been in the majority black districts, the 3rd and 5th. And so we have to protect those districts.
And if you change those lines, that will change.
All right. So what I'm going to ask, I see you, Mr. Vickers. What I'm going to ask as we close this out, if there's any additional information or considerations, once again, these community meetings are set aside so that the commissioners can hear considerations. I encourage you to join us for our for our weekly commission meetings, because it is during that time that we are able to listen and learn from one another about some of the pieces like Commissioner Adams shared, and other considerations as far as the rationale, the analysis, why these things are important. So we invite you to be a part of that. There was a question that was asked on Zoom that asked, where can we get copies of today's mappings and presentations? We invite you to go to our redistricting, or the city's redistricting webpage. On that webpage is where you can have easy access to any and all of the Zoom links that are connected to our commission meetings and even our community meetings. You also have the 3 maps that were shared today in Cal's PowerPoint, in addition to some additional demographic data. So please know that you can Google KCMO Redistrict or Redistricting, and it should come up. And we'll also, is it on the Zoom link as well? Can someone drop the link in the Zoom so we can make sure that that is shared? But in the meanwhile, it's www.kcmo.gov. Think /redistrict. Get me right, Beth.
Yes, kcmo.gov/redistrict. No ing. So you're correct. If you Googled KCMO redistricting, it'll pop up. Hopefully, the first result.
And that's a great way to continue, because as we hear more information, our perspective evolves. So we are learning and sharing and inputting additional information, and so we want to make sure that is part of it. So friends, we have 5 minutes before the conclusion. Just a heads up, if you see commissioners, including myself, scoot out, it's because it's homecoming, y'all. I have a teenager that I need to get, that I want to support and make sure that my dear son is ready. So I see your hand. We're going to go ahead and close out just so we can make sure that if there's any particular commissioner that you want to speak to, that you'll get a chance to share in additional. Thank you all for your kindness. Kindness does matter. We're not asking people to be nice, but we do appreciate your kindness. Thank you for speaking your truth and sharing your considerations, that we recognize that different people can experience the same thing and have very different experiences, and so we want to be able to make room for that. So with that, we'll close out at 1:56, and for those commissioners that can stay and engage, please be able to take advantage of that. Beth?
Thank you all for those who attended in person and on Zoom, and I'll just add that if you're wanting to attend, if you're watching on Zoom and maybe didn't catch the whole thing or want to attend a future meeting, they're all posted online as well. At the very top of the webpage, you'll also, hello, there we go. You'll also find on the webpage, there was a reference to the YouTube channel. If you go to the redistricting webpage, you'll find, if you scroll down, you'll find our chair here doing an introduction video about the process that sets really great context, but also gives you a playlist of all the past meetings, and we're always adding to that playlist with each redistricting commission meeting that takes place. So if you cannot attend in person, you can rewatch it back. But we do invite you to attend via Zoom or in person in those meetings as well. Wednesday nights, 4 to 6. Thank you so much for coming. Have a great rest of your Saturday.